Jan Underwood and her husband Joe had no reason to be more worried than any other couple expecting a baby in 1978. Jan had given birth to a happy and healthy daughter 2 years earlier. So when the doctor visited her in recovery and briefed her about newborn son Austin, she couldn't have been more stunned. Little Austin had been born with Down syndrome, and the doctor laid out a bleak scenario.
He sat down on the edge of my bed and he said, "We have to tell you that your son may never be self-supportive, never be self-sufficient, and probably won't even be potty trained or toilet trained." So it was all very surreal to me.
But it was what the doctor said next that shook Jan and Joe to their core.
He actually told us that we didn't have to take Austin home, that we could put him in an institution or, foster home, but we didn't have to leave the hospital with him.
Jan and Joe did not leave Austin behind when they checked out of the hospital.
I just told him, I said, we brought him into this world and we're taking him home with us.
And that's what they did. Not surprisingly, Jan says they moped around for a couple of weeks, but then she came to a life-changing decision.
I'm going to, treat him as a boy first and having Down syndrome second.
They've been told so many times no by society, they start to lose hope.
Tom opened Howdy Homemade Ice Cream in Dallas 3 years ago. The manager and nearly all his employees have special needs.
You give an underdog a chance and we'll take a bullet for you. Parents often are skeptical to let their son or daughter go into a workplace, but I think that's what's key and most important, because in the end we're here to answer that question of the giant elephant in the room, which is what's going to happen to your child after you pass away.
Jan soon decided that inclusion, not isolation, would be the key to breaking free of the tyranny of Down syndrome. Once she made that commitment, she went all out. The family endured setbacks, heartaches, and tears, and they celebrated breakthroughs and victories, large and small, as all families do. Austin grew, made friends, and he developed a warmth, an engaging personality that surprised nearly everyone who met him. Jan stuck to her guns year after year.
I was going to make sure that we had the right things going on so that he had a fair shake in whatever he did in this world.
But could even she have ever guessed how Austin's life would turn out? Today at 40, Austin leads an immeasurably better life than the doctors would ever have believed. He lives independently in his own home. He owns and operates a food truck hot dog business, Austin's Underdogs, and he has sold more than 25,000 hot dogs in less than 3 years. Is it a miracle or the result of a million tiny successes over the years? To better appreciate the tenacity and vision that brought the Underwood family to this point, we need to look back more than 100 years to a crumbling family compound in mountainous northern Italy. It was 1906, and Jan's future grandfather, Giuseppe or Joe Beneventi, was 16. He could foresee nothing but a dismal future. Relatives in the United States wrote to him about coal mining jobs for boys his age in Texas. So Joe borrowed what money he could and booked a passage alone on a steamer bound for America. He arrived at Ellis Island with no English and very little money. A long train ride later, he finally reached his new home, a boom town called Thurber that had exploded a few years earlier, halfway between Fort Worth and Abilene. Joe found work there in the Thurber coal mine, alongside other youngsters who became known as the child miners of Thurber. Thurber and Mingus were just a couple of miles apart, with one thing in common: the Texas and Pacific Railroad. Mingus was a busy rail hub in 1906, population close to 2,000. Thurber was a pure company town, born of a nearly forgotten West Texas coal rush at the turn of the century. The Texas and Pacific Coal Company bought, built, and ran everything in Thurber. the homes, the stores, the school, even the church. When Joe Beneventi stepped off the train in November 1906, the Wild West was over. But that news hadn't quite made it to the bustling Mingus-Thurber district. The Snake Saloon in Mingus was selling an average of 7 train carloads of beer every week, and they claimed to have the world's longest horseshoe-shaped bar. There were plenty of pool halls, domino parlors, and saloons in both towns. T&P built a huge brick factory and turned out more than 80,000 9-pound paving bricks a day. Half a dozen switch engines stayed busy round the clock in the Mingus train yard, where 250 men worked. The work was hard and the pay was low, but Joe Beneventi never regretted his move to Texas. Joe enjoyed family life and a regular payday. He played trombone in the Thurber Band's weekly outdoor concerts. In 1918, he married Maggie Auda, the grocer's daughter, and the next year she gave birth to a son, John. Then the bottom fell out. The boom town of Thurber disappeared. A couple of hundred stubborn souls had found a better life here, and they refused to give up. Maggie Auda's sister Mary became the wife of John Franks. After her father's death in 1932, Mary and John took over the grocery store. They would keep it open for 40 more years. Joe Beneventi found work with the Lone Star Gas Company, and eventually he retired. The Biandinis built Johnny's Liquor Store next to the grocery in 1961. The Beneventis, the Audas, Franks, and their extended families had evolved into a small but tough dynasty centered around the old Franks grocery store. Fatty Man Franks died in 1972, and finally, so did the store. Jan Underwood grew up in Fort Worth in the 50s. She married Joe Underwood the year the store shut down, and they began raising a family. Jan's early battles and victories for inclusion with her son Austin were encouraging. Austin's difficulty with reading kept him out of most regular classes, but it opened the door for him in the home economics department. Jan finally found a program at the University of New Mexico in Roswell, and Austin studied there for a year. It changed everything.
I have been out there because I want to go to college. And I want to go to college because my brother and sister went to college, and I wanted to be like what they went to, and I did it.
Austin returned from college with a new career path and a taste for independence. He moved out of his parents' house and got his own apartment. Then in April 2016, Jan helped Austin launch Austin's Underdogs. From inside his food truck, Austin prepares hot dogs for corporate events, parties, fundraisers, and the business has grown briskly. By now, you are probably not surprised that Austin's success in building a better life got Jan's wheels turning even more. And her brainstorming led her back to Mingus, the ghost town of her happy girlhood days, the place that still refused to curl up and die after nearly a century of crippling hardships. Mingus appeared to Jan as a fine incubator for her next business venture, the Mingus Job Academy. The centerpiece of the property was the abandoned grocery store Jan's great-grandparents had bought in 1904. Next to it, a brick home and the abandoned liquor store, now converted to an animal rescue shelter. Jan saw much more. Jan plans a vocational training center for special needs adults. Some will be day students, and others will live on site for anywhere from 1 to 6 weeks of training.
The next project is to get this grocery store done with an authentic Italian restaurant, and then the gardens.
Her plans for the old store will also include a coffee house and a boutique. Then a friend showed Jan some tiny houses they had built.
He was just like, Jan, you need to put tiny houses out here, and you need to put a lot of them. He said, you can get 8 small houses out here and have a beautiful garden.
There's just so many special needs families and people that know people with special needs that think, gosh, this is just, this is such a slam dunk that No one's giving them a chance. If they're given a chance, they're gonna do really well.
Once the renovations are done, the next step will be to carefully screen potential clients to make sure they will really gain from the training.
When we first get the clients, what we'll do is, based on their interest and their passion, we will find the skill set that they need to learn and be trained on here at the Mingus Job Academy.
Dylan Rafferty is a successful entrepreneur who was born with a hearing impairment disability. Dylan is excited about the Mingus Job Academy.
I think they're setting that foundation of a supportive network, a supportive community that can surround themselves with a center that they want to build. And I think that is a brilliant idea, a brilliant concept.
They're going to have to meet the criteria that Austin had at Eastern New Mexico University. And that criteria was, again, to wake up to an alarm and be able to do your own laundry.
The clients will train on the job in the restaurant, coffee house, garden, boutique, or animal shelter for starters. But the training opportunities won't stop there. Jan stresses that the Mingus Job Academy won't be a nonprofit, but a viable business that will appeal to investors.
The actual restaurant and coffee shop and boutique and the tiny houses for the whole camper program, that will all be a for-profit venture where I would like to have investors.
I think maybe if you kind of rolled in Thelma and Louise and The Wolf of Wall Street, you get Jan Underwood, and that's what it needs to move a project like this forward.
And recently they got the Governor's Entrepreneurship Award. I have no doubt that more awards are to come. People want to invest or who want to be their customers.
In the meantime, Austin will continue to be Jan's living proof of the power of vision, inclusiveness, and determination.